Escape from a one-room schoolhouse. When the roof blows off their school in a storm, students flee into the icy cold and snow. Will their teacher, Minnie Freeman, be able to save them? Brr. The subject of this story makes me chilly. I need to get bundled up to share it with you. This is a hat that my grandfather, Grampy Sperry, used to wear when plowing the parking lot of his apartments. It's a fake fur, and it only covers the very top of your head. He had exactly the same hairstyle that I do. So it's pretty important to keep a lid on it. And he lived in northern Maine. Minnie Freeman didn't live in northern Maine. She lived in Nebraska, which is a state right here in the very middle of the United States. This is a nonfiction text. It's a historical text sharing information about a real event that actually happened in history. It all starts on January 12th, 1888. Morning recess, Mirror Valley, Nebraska, United States. Minnie Freeman smiled as she opened the door to her one-room schoolhouse. After weeks of winter cold, it almost felt like spring. Her 16 students raced outside. Some of them didn't even bother to put on coats. Minnie's youngest student was 5 years old. Minnie was only 19. Some of her oldest students were almost as old as she was, as their teacher. And here's a little excerpt, which means like an extra bit of information. One-room schoolhouses. More than 100 years ago, many small towns in the United States, Canada, and Australia had one-room schoolhouses. Students from first grade to high school were taught in the same room. One teacher usually taught all the grades. The schoolhouses were simple buildings. Inside you might find a coal stove and some desks. There might be a blackboard and a bucket for drinking water. Outside, there would be a field to play in and an outhouse. An outhouse is an outdoor bathroom without electricity or running water. For a seat, it has a piece of wood with a hole cut in it. That's it. January 12th, 1888, noon. A student was reading out loud when a howling wind rattled the windows and doors. Minnie shivered and hurried to peer through the window. Blowing snow was making it hard to see, and it was strangely dark for the middle of the day. Then a sudden blast of wind shook the building. Minnie stepped away from the window. No one in town had expected a blizzard today. Minnie was worried. What if this big, sudden storm trapped them all in the schoolhouse for days? How would she take care of 16 children? How would she keep them warm? Suddenly, the door blew open with a loud bang. What is a blizzard? A blizzard is a dangerous snowstorm that lasts for at least 3 hours. A blizzard has a lot of snow or blowing snow and winds greater than 35 miles per hour. The blowing snow makes it hard to see. So instead of snowflakes just dropping, falling, the wind blows it all around. So it turns into, instead of a beautiful cascade of dropping snowflakes, it turns into sometimes they even call it a whiteout, where you can't see anything. And that's part of the serious danger of a blizzard. Minnie and one of the older boys struggled to close the door and then grabbed some tools and nailed it shut. But then the wind blew in 2 windows and they had to nail them shut too. Outside, the wind was howling. Minnie and her students huddled together, trying to keep warm. Some of the children were scared, and one of them started to cry. When a winter storm came, people usually stayed inside because it was too dangerous to go out. That's why Minnie was so worried. What would she do with her students in a terrible storm like this? Minnie knew that the schoolhouse would not be strong enough to protect them from the storm. She needed a plan to move her students to a safer place. Then she remembered some rope she had packed away. It gave her an idea. What do you think she's going to do with the rope? You should be making a prediction right now. Minnie wasn't sure her idea would work, but she had to try. She found the rope and carefully tied one end around her wrist. Then she looped the rope around the wrist of one of the children. She did the same thing until everyone was tied together in a long line. Suddenly the door blew open again, and they heard a loud roar. The wind had ripped off part of the school's sod roof, covering them with snow. It was time to make their escape. Buildings made of sod. In earlier times, when people moved into new parts of the United States, Canada, and Australia, they had to build their own homes and schools. In places with few trees, they sometimes dug up squares of grass called sod to make walls and roofs. The sod helped keep the buildings warm in winter and cool in summer. Almost like digging a hole underground, they dug up the ground and put it on top of them. Luckily, Minnie knew the way to the nearest farmhouse because that's where she was staying with a farmer and his wife. But would the youngest children be able to walk that far in this kind of storm? Minnie knew there was no choice. They had to leave the school. As Minnie and her students set out, the icy snow was blinding. It stuck to their eyelashes, making it hard to see where they were going, and the fierce wind stung their faces. When one of the youngest children stumbled, Minnie picked her up and kept moving. The older boys were at the far end of the line and made sure the smaller children were moving. Minnie and her students trudged on, even though all they could see was snow. So the older boys, they were like the anchors, bringing up the rear, making sure everyone kept up. Minnie and her students plodded on and on, stumbling through big drifts of snow. Would they ever see their parents? Would they ever be warm again? But then they saw the farmhouse ahead of them. When the front door opened, the children rushed into the arms of the farmer and his wife. They helped the children peel off their frozen clothes and wrapped them in warm blankets. The children were tired and hungry. The grown-ups raced to cook as much food as they could for a big warm supper. The children felt so lucky. Food had never tasted so good, and they were alive. Daily Alta, California. San Francisco, California, Tuesday, February 7th, 1888. So this was several days after the storm, which was January 12th. I did only my simple duty, and as any other teacher would have done, I tried to take care of my children. February 1888, many people died in the storm, which was covered by newspapers around the country. Reporters also wrote many stories about Minnie Freeman's bravery. Minnie said she wasn't a hero, she just did what she had to do. From across the country, people sent her gifts, including a gold watch and a chain. There were 16 rubies on it, one for each of the students she kept safe from the storm. It's amazing. And she was only 19 years old. Stay safe.